if you can get in the moment and get these and stop thinking about the future and the past,
Mm.
you become happier now. But then you learn how to be even more and more happier because you're like, I'm living more and more in the moment. And I believe, and I'm sure this is why I created On Trajectory, which I know we haven't talked a lot about, but I created this financial planning tool for regular people
Mhm.
because I literally was going crazy thinking about numbers.
Hello and welcome to the Neighborhood Money Podcast, a video podcast here to talk about personal finance and helping you build a life you deserve. If you're new here in the neighborhood, my name is Cavan and I am one of the hosts of this podcast. And the other guy on the end of the
Yep.
other side of the screen or in the other side of the headphones is my co-host, Drew Norrie. How's it going, Drew?
It is going. And for anybody listening, I was going to wave, but I remembered that there's people that don't watch on YouTube. So I did no waving, but I'm doing well over here. I'm back in Minnesota now after a little spell in Florida. So the weather's been a little bit more chilly. I'm still trying to get my northern winter blood back. But as far as Minnesota goes, the coming back to actually pretty good weather.
Yeah, so cliche to talk about weather when you're from Minnesota, but actually, it's funny that you say that because it's beautiful outside. From my point of view, I think today is like in the 50s and just absolutely nice, blue sky, sunny. So it's pretty funny that you come back to warmer weather for us, but then it's
I brought
actually
it
cold
back
for you.
with me.
Yeah, there you go. So Drew, we got an awesome episode today with Tyson Koska, who is the founder of OnTrajectory, which is arguably one of the coolest tools I've seen to help you financial plan. We'll talk about it in the conversation with Tyson, but just to give you a little high level idea of what this tool does is it basically is a financial planning tool. It's a projection tool, a model, as you might call it, that you can put in all of the different inputs. So you can put in like your income, you can put in how much you're investing, what those returns are, those estimated returns in those investments, and you can see how it's going to grow and build over time, taken into different stages of your life. And it actually shows you what that dollar from an expected standpoint will be at retirement. But then even beyond that, Drew, it shows you how much, once you start drawing down, how long that money is going to last you, and if it's going to last you to whatever you expect to live to. So it's a really cool too. But the conversation with Tyson is just as interesting.
One thing I have to say on his software is it is, really focused towards maybe that engineering brain or the people that love Excel. You can literally put in any scenario you want in this software. I know we spoke with Tyson. He said he's trying to make it a little bit more user friendly as it goes on because it's very community driven software. So if they want something, he'll add it. But just test driving the software for like a half an hour or a day, inputting things. If you can think of a scenario to happen, you can add that into the software, and it might get to be a little much at times, but I know that there's brains out there that love
Yeah.
doing every little thing that they
Yeah.
can towards their future. So
Right.
it's definitely a very cool software to check out if you have not.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I got real nerdy with it probably for like a couple of hours when we were prepping for the show with Tyson, just to check it out and see what it was all about. But man, it is so cool. Like you said, the UI and all that stuff is coming. That usability feature, that ease of use feature is coming. But I highly recommend checking it out if you're listening to this podcast. It's pretty cool. But with that, Drew, let's go check on what Tyson's got to say.
Let's go.
Making his way into the neighborhood this week is Tyson Koska, a former U.S. Army helicopter pilot, fellow money nerd, and founder and CEO of OnTrajectory, a financial planning software that allows you to control and model your financial future. Tyson, so incredibly excited to have you join Drew and myself here and have the conversation all about your journey with personal finance, your journey with entrepreneurship, as well as a pretty awesome tool called OnTrajectory. And a little spoiler, it's probably one of the coolest and most fun I've had with a financial planning tool to date. So super excited to get into that conversation with you. But yeah, thanks for joining us here on the podcast. How you doing today?
Great. And I'm glad you used the word fun in that introduction because it may not be fun for everyone, but honestly, truly, in my heart, if I could make personal finance fun, as much fun as it can be, that I would die a happy man.
It's such an important part, right, of trying to make something that it can be very mundane for a lot of people interesting and fun, because it can just make their lives, their future, so much brighter and so much more secure. So Tyson, your financial journey really started out like a lot of other people, deep in debt and needing to create a plan for your money and for your future. What was that tipping point for you? You know, that point that you were like, hey, enough is enough. I'm going to get out of debt and I'm going to turn my financial picture around and really grow my financial literacy.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you don't mind if I don't answer that question exactly immediately, but I have to give you a little bit of flavor about my situation.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very lower class, not lower class, lower mid. I grew up in a lower middle income family. So I didn't have a lot growing up. And when I was 13 years old, now I know you guys are in Minnesota, so this isn't going to make a lot of sense. You're going to think, what is he talking about? But here in Maryland, we love to crush ice and put sugar water on top. We call them snowballs. And
Okay.
when I was 13 years old, I had a snowball stand during the summers, and I suddenly, going from a kid that literally had no money to I had hundreds of dollars in 1981 that I could play with. I actually bought my a personal computer back in 1981
Cool.
with money from a snowball stand. It's like the banana stand from anyway,
Nice.
Arrested Development. But
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
So that's where you stash all
and
your money now.
yeah, it's all in the snowball stand. So what happened was I was a young teenager and I got this taste of I didn't know what it was called at the time, but it was called financial independence from my parents. I was actually able to have my own money, buy the things that I wanted. Of course, I had to do the job. I had to sit in a
Of
snowball
course. Yeah.
stand for hours every day in the middle of summer when all my friends are out riding their bikes and whatnot. But that, you know, that was awesome. I had my own money. And now to get back to your question was I went from that young teenager, middle teenager working through high school and whatnot, and I joined the military in 1988,
Okay.
and all of a sudden I had a lot of money. Like I thought I had a lot of money before, and I was doing things with it. But then I really did have a lot of money. I was a warrant officer in the army, and I started getting these big paychecks, and I immediately somehow lost my mind. I literally was opening up credit cards all the time. I bought a new car. I bought new like I just
Yeah.
bought
Yeah.
everything I could buy. All the stuff that I wished that I could have had,
Hmm.
even when I was a teenager. I still didn't really have a lot, and I mean, I think back about it a lot. I'm like, what was I maxing out store credit cards, Visa card, like just buying everything, like coats and jackets and $50 cologne,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
Like, why did I do all of this? And all of a sudden, I found myself literally like not can't make minimum payments on the 7 or 8 credit cards I had.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is so stupid. I'm making more than I ever have. I'm a real person. I'm a officer in the army, and I'm completely in debt. Thousands of dollars in debt. Yeah. So that happened. Now, how I got out of it, I actually can't even take full credit for because I got out of it because Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in 1990 or 91, whatever it was.
Okay.
And I got sent to the desert and had no shopping malls and bars to spend my money on.
So you're almost
And
forced
that's
to
ridiculous to
pay
say.
it down.
I
Forced to
was forced
save.
to. It's crazy. But in the end, I really did learn an important lesson. I mean, and you know the lesson.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, first I want to say thanks for your service, and then also when you were saving all of that money when you were overseas, how did you keep that same I don't know, philosophy with money when you came back to the States?
Simply because I just never wanted to be in that situation again.
Gotcha.
It's like, you get burned once and hopefully you learn a lesson, because if you get burned twice, it's your fault.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like a wake up call and see, I don't come from a family of savers. My parents they lived frugally because they didn't have a lot of money, but there was never a question of saving. It was like, okay, can we afford a family vacation this year? Oh, we can. We're going to drive to Indiana and see my cousins, or something like that. And so, having had gotten the good paycheck, overextended myself, literally gotten in trouble, and then by the grace of the universe
Yeah.
helping me get it out of that trouble, I was like, never again. No, I just can't do that. And my mindset completely shifted in that time frame. I went from, okay, I got to start, planning,
Yep.
doing something.
And when you came home, was it, did you still fly helicopter privately, or were you, I think you said something, you were a software engineer, or what was it when you came back?
It's the weirdest story. So I actually went directly from high school. Took a year. Well, I didn't take a year off. It took me a year to apply to this program in the Army. So I just worked, and I was able to go directly from high school to flight school. And so I went from high school graduate, did basic training, did warrant. It's called Warrant Officer Candidate School, and then flight school. And all of that took a year and a half. And then that's when I really got in financial trouble. It was all during my school years.
Gotcha.
And then ended up being stationed overseas, and then of course Desert Storm, when all that happened. And I'm sorry, I lost track of the original question.
When you came back to the States, what
when I
was
came-
kind
right.
of like your job, or?
Yeah, so all those things happened, but honestly, the only reason I joined the military was not for the excitement and the adventure. It was for the GI Bill.
Oh, okay.
And because I realized when I was a senior in high school, my parents came to me and said, "Hey, you've got a lot of friends that they're going to be going away to school and going to college, and we would love to be able to do that for you, but we can't afford it. If you want to look into loans and scholarships and grants and everything." And I just, again, you look back at your former self, and you're like, well, why did I make the decisions that I made? But I was like,
Yep.
I don't want to have to work full time when I'm going to school full time. And the Army, plus I come from my dad was in the Air Force, and I come from a military family, so I knew that these things existed. And when I went to the recruiter and he said, "Oh, I can make you a pilot, give you the GI Bill money, and when you get out, you can go to college for free." I was like, "Okay, become a pilot,
Yeah.
fly,
Make
and
money.
then come out and go to." Yeah, I was like, "That's awesome." So that's what I did. I did that. Luckily, I got accepted. Almost didn't, but I edged my way in there. And so when I got out, I had no college education. I was a high school graduate and a former Army officer, which sounds weird, right? So I went, and here's the really ironic thing. The reason I told you about the conversation with my parents about I want to go away to school, I want to live on campus, I want to be in the dorms, I want Animal House,
Yeah.
all that
Yep.
things. I ended up getting out of the Army, living in my parents' basement, going to the local college, and doing everything that they had urged me to do 5 years before. I ended up doing all of it. Exactly. And you know what? It was great. My college experience, yeah, it was not normal, but I made great relationships. I had a great time. I never lived on campus. I never went to a frat party, but I had a great time.
Going back to you getting out of debt and then you not spending money overseas and then coming back, and it sounds like going to college and really starting your financial journey at that point in time after getting out of the massive amount of credit card debt. Talk to us how that went for you. I know it's a huge obstacle, not only for people to get out of debt, and that's kind of like a defined, confined type life event. But then the next step is planning for your financial future. And a lot of people get caught up on that, and it's really a big roadblock for them that they unfortunately end up putting off. Thinking back, to that time when you're getting out of school and you're starting your career, what did you have anyone or any type of resources or anything like that that really helped you get ahead and really start to build financial security so that you can one day become financially free?
No. And I'll tell you, that transition, okay, getting out, I love the way you just put that, because getting out of debt is one thing, but then transitioning your brain to say, okay, I'm going to become an investor. I'm going to trust the system. I'm going to give the system my money that I never did before, right? All I did before was spend money. Now I'm going to give the system my money, and I'm going to trust it to help make me wealthier. And yeah, I've read, the stock market since 1920 has made, but you know what? I grew up in the 80s, and there was wild fluctuations during the 80s.
Yep.
I remember the 70s very well because I was, a younger kid, but I remember the inflation of the 70s. I mean, I remember very tough financial times. Doesn't help that my parents weren't savers, and they never, they a lot of distrust in markets and people. Yeah, anyway,
Saving under the mattress.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And so I'll talk about bad decision after bad decision. So getting in debt in the military was a bad decision. Then I thought, you know what? So when I got myself out, I was like, I need to invest. I don't want to call it predatory, but they invite people to speak to young military folks about things. And one of the things that they do is they push savings bonds really hard.
Interesting.
And I'm sure we all know that they're not necessarily the best investment. They're secure, but they're not really a great investment.
Yeah.
But for me, that was the first leap. I was like, okay, I'll start putting X amount of money aside per month, buying savings bonds. So I bought some savings bonds. And by the time I got out of the military, I think I had $3,000 in savings bonds.
Sure.
Which, of course, they mature so slowly. Like, I can't touch the money anyway, unless I want to get really hit with penalties. So that was
and now you have $3,050.
Right.
So that was the second bad decision. So I had this money. It was locked up in savings bonds. So then I got out and I realized, oh, this was a bad decision. So I'm going to start putting money into mutual funds, because I definitely knew I didn't have the sophistication or the daring to just go straight into stocks. Plus, you have to remember, this is early 90s. We didn't have the low cost trading mechanisms that we have now. I mean,
Right.
a single trade, the cheapest you would find a single trade back in those days is, I'm thinking like Schwab had like $30 or $40 trades,
wow.
which by today's standards is like, what? You got to pay to
Right,
trade.
right.
And when you're only able to purchase $100 or $200, it's like, oh no, I'm not doing that. So mutual funds was the way to go, and I was a USAA member because I was, and still am, and it's a great organization. I promote it everywhere. So I bought these mutual funds, and I bought them. So they send you prospectuses. Have you guys ever read a prospectus? I'm pretty sure I never have.
Because I'm a money nerd, yes.
Okay, so you actually have. So I bought into these, and they send you prospectuses, and I picked them, and I look like, oh my God, if I try to read this, I'm going to get more stressed out than if I don't read. Well, what happened was, I don't know what funds I bought into, but they gave dividends at the end of the year. And they lost value that year. So I had to pay taxes on the dividends, and I lost money on the investment.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is a bunch. I don't know if I can cuss on this, but this is
Of course. Go for it.
I was like, I was better off in savings bonds. At least I didn't lose money. It was a very confusing period, but I lost the money. I literally sent angry email. How could you let me buy this if you knew the stock or the mutual fund was already underwater, and then you made me pay income tax on the dividends?
Yep.
Okay, it happened. I sucked it up, and I realized I need to learn a little bit more. Learned a little bit more, and then I learned the most important lessons of all, and that is market corrections happen. Things go down dramatically, and you've got to get a little financial investment fortitude in you,
Right.
because I've weathered 2000, the big
Yep. The
after
dot
the
com.
Twin Towers and the dot-com bust. I've weathered 2007, 2008 with the real estate crisis. Obviously we've all weathered the 30% drop in the market when COVID hit.
Right.
I mean, to me these days, like my wife is funny. She looks at the paper. She goes, "Oh my God, we've lost so much money." I'm like, "We haven't lost any. We never had it to begin with. We haven't lost it.
Yep.
Let's get so." That was a really long answer to how was my transition from getting out of debt to becoming an investor. But those
So
are
is
the
this kind of
things that
like
happened.
dipping your water in different vehicles that were potentially promoted or people talked about, and then you're saying, "Hey, I kind of want to try that
I mean,
out."
I always knew I wanted, like, these numbers I'm hearing about, like compound interest is the
Yeah.
most powerful force in the, like, I knew I wanted to participate in all of this.
Mhm.
I didn't know how. So, and probably the rest of the answer is, so I went to college, got degrees in, for some reason, in English and philosophy. We don't even need to go there. And then when I graduated, I was like, oh God, I need a job. And I don't know if you remember, I told you one of the purchases I made from the snowball stand was I bought my own personal computer back in 1981
Mhm.
when I was 13 years old. At that time, I taught myself how to program. And so when I graduated from college, I was a pilot for 4 years. I have degrees in English and philosophy, and I literally couldn't find a job. And I went to a computer learning center, and I was like, I can teach programming, I can
Mhm.
teach this, I can teach that, because I knew the stuff well. And they hired me on the spot, and that was started my IT career. So I only entered IT because as a 13-year-old kid, I bought a personal computer from a snowball stand.
And it really sounds like, maybe you had some bumps along the way in your financial journey, but because you are a lifelong learner and you were able to continue to grow your financial literacy and accept that there is more to learn out there, that you ended up getting to a point that you understood how to invest and you understood how to end up building wealth. But if I can switch the conversation or the question just a little bit, in personal finance, we do talk a lot about growing your net worth, building financial equity, building towards financial independence. And one thing that actually really caught my eye and something that I actually really love that you said is this phrase that you call happiness equity, and how important it is to account for that on your your financial journey.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you mean by building happiness equity and how someone can focus on growing happiness equity while also being on their path towards financial freedom?
Yeah, and I honestly, this is the most important thing, because um, if compound interest is the most powerful force in the world, I used that phrase a couple of minutes ago.
Mm.
Happiness equity, compounding your happiness by being able to focus on your life that you're living, which that's where, for me, that's where happiness comes from,
Mm.
is when I can stop thinking about this future thing I got to take care of, and
Yep.
or this screw up that I did X number of years ago. When you can start living now in the moment, you can focus on, even doing the dishes or brushing your teeth, anything, literally anything. If you can, like when I'm flossing, I'm like, I hated flossing for years. I was like, I got to do this thing.
Yeah.
But like at one point, I was like, oh man, I can feel like this tooth has got like this little weird nut on it, and this tooth has got this thing. And I was like, oh, I got getting to know my teeth a little bit
Yeah.
better. Like I was like, oh, flossing's fun. I mean, that sounds so completely stupid, but if you can get in the moment and get these and stop thinking about the future and the past,
Mm.
you become happier now. But then you learn how to be even more and more happier because you're like, I'm living more and more in the moment. And I believe, and I'm sure this is why I created OnTrajectory, which I know we haven't talked a lot about, but I created this financial planning tool for regular people
Mhm.
because I literally was going crazy thinking about numbers.
Mm.
Can I afford this? Should I afford this? Is it better to spend my money here? Is it better to spend my money there? Like I remember when my second child was born, I was like, oh God, we need a bigger house, we need a second car, we need and the numbers. And I had spreadsheets and I had all that stuff. Like I'm a programmer and finance geek, but it's a lot of work to keep up with all that information. And I was like, I just need a plan that I can trust. Like, okay, building a budget is one thing, but if you go out, and I'm not criticizing YNAB or Mint, and I'm not like,
Yep.
I love those guys, are awesome. They're awesome. Getting on a budget is super duper important. But they show you 3 or 6 months of your future. I need 30, 50 years of my future.
Right.
Show me that. And I was literally driving myself crazy with thinking about, can I afford the lot? All that, like all that stuff. And I realized I got to shut this down. I got to get these numbers out of my head into some place where I can set it and forget it, to use another famous phrase.
Yeah.
And when you do that, because money takes you out of the moment. You're at Disneyland with your kids and you're like, you want $42 for a hot dog and a Coke? I'm like, dude, forget about it. It's Disneyland. You budgeted already.
Take that hot dog and shove it for 42 bucks.
Like, this is the best freaking Coke I've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, just, and you're look at the smile on your kid's face. Like, you can't let money suck you out of these moments in your life. So that's what I mean by happiness equity. So compound interest is equity that, you're making interest on your interest. Well, you know what? If you can get the numbers out of your head and have a plan, you can get happiness on your happiness. And that's awesome.
So you just brought up OnTrajectory, your software that you created. So what exactly is OnTrajectory, and how does it get you from not sleeping at night to happy about flossing?
Yeah. I know. Weird. I mean, it's a personal finance planning tool. It's a personal finance modeling tool, but it's not like when you go to a financial planner, they've got access to a lot of tools you don't have access to. But even if you did have access to it, I'm telling you, you would not want to use them. They're like massively complicated, very difficult, and it's really hard to actually see the results that you want to see. This is no lie. I was sitting, checking the internet every 6 months, waiting for someone to write software that said, okay, here's how much I have. I've got an IRA, I've got a 401k, I'm contributing this to my 401k, I've got a 529 plan for my kids, this, that. What if my wife is pregnant? What if she wants to take off 2 years? What does that do? That income stream goes down. Like, I thought, this is really easy. Someone's going to invent this software. I'm going to plug all my numbers in. I'm going to see a chart, and I'm going to know exactly when can I stop, when will I be financially independent? Because let's be frank, or at least frank for me, the FI community uses the 4% rule and 25 times spending.
Yep.
That's if you spend the same thing for the rest of your life. We're sending our kids to college. We're buying so I've got some weaknesses. There's certain things I like to buy, but they don't last forever. They last for a few years and then they're done. I can't look at my financial future as a straight line graph. There's bumps, there's dips, there's spending that occurs and doesn't occur. So I was waiting for someone to make that tool. I literally got tired of someone to make it, and I started working on it myself, literally for myself.
Yeah.
And so I always thought, you know what, even if this company is a complete failure, at least I finally had the tool that I wanted, and I can map out my financial future until I die, and I can see it. And my wife wants to take off 1 year because she's pregnant. It's one click away. I can see the impact in 50 years of what that does.
So building OnTrajectory, I mean, for all you listeners out there, you have to go check it out because it can be very involved. It can be very complex, but it can also be super simple to get started. But it's a very ambitious software. And like you said, it does a lot. You can really customize it to your heart desire, and you can put in a ton of different inputs and a ton of different assumptions to see what your potential financial future looks like. Can you talk to us through the process of building such a robust software and what that really looked like for you through that entrepreneurial journey?
I can, and it's weird because as I said, I built it for myself. So I have two business partners that are better programmers than I. So I even though I've been programming since I'm 13, unfortunately, I'm not that great at it because I got in my IT career, I got pulled around into like, project management and, doing things like that. You lose your chops. So
Sure.
I realized early on I wasn't going to be able to solve all the problems myself. So I got two really smart partners that have stuck with, we've all stuck together through this journey. And so the very first iteration was, what do I want? What are the inputs what are the minimum amount of inputs that I can put in and get a real usable result? Always keeping in mind that life is going to get complicated,
Hmm.
but this is, I don't want to answer, I don't want the software to be like TurboTax where you have to answer literally hundreds and hundreds of questions
Yeah.
in order to get through it. I want put a little bit in, see it, and then like the lens of a camera, the iris, as you turn it, it gets clearer and clearer. And that's how I think about personal finance, because you're on a journey. You make assumptions when you start, like, you fill out some calculator, Fidelity or Vanguard or whatever. They give you a point in time glimpse, but then if you come back to it 6 months later, you got to input everything again.
Right.
How do you know whether those assumptions that you put in 6 years ago, are you checkpointing me? Are you showing me that, hey, yeah, that was right, or was it wrong? So I wanted something that was going to grow with you, something that was going to be able to handle situations, but wasn't intimidating. Now, if you read any book on entrepreneurism, they're going to tell you, I'm sure you've heard the term MVP, minimum viable product.
Hmm.
You come out with what's minimum, and then you market the hell out of it, and then you find what works, and you shape it. Honestly, guys, like, I might seem like I'm personable or like comfortable. I hate like focusing on marketing. I would rather sit in a dark room at 5 o'clock in the morning with a cup of coffee and code
Sure.
and play with numbers and look at graphs, and like, that's where I really have fun. I really have fun doing that. And so we made the classic mistake of like, if we build it, they will come
Okay. Mm.
mentality. And luckily my partners just like stuck with it. They're like, yeah, okay, we'll keep building. We'll keep building. We put a beta out. The community would write in and say, oh, it'd be great if you had this feature. We're like, okay, yeah, we can probably do that. But we never really marketed. We never
Hmm.
really pushed it out there in a way that would help us grow.
Mm.
So what it did help us build was an incredibly flexible tool that can pretty much handle any human being's financial situation, which is nice. So I have that. That's really nice. But what we haven't done, and I appreciate that you said it's really easy to get started, but what you left out and what's really true is getting started is easy and all the features and complexity are there, but that middle ground, training you, teaching you how to get from a simple four questions, I'm in the tool, but how do I make this good for me? How to make this right for me? That's something that's really been a struggle for us, and we're continuing to focus on it. We were luckily last year we got an investor. We now have some capital. We're
Okay.
building out just those exact features that's gonna help that middle ground. So we're not a company that sells we're not like Mint that sells your or Personal Capital that's trying to get your assets under management. We're not that. We're a tool that is here literally to help you solve your problem. And if you have a new problem that we haven't figured out to solve, you write us questions at OnTrajectory.com. I would love this feature. And if we've heard 3 or 4 people ask for that feature, I guarantee you within a month or two it'll be in the tool. That's why you pay for it. And that's why you don't pay for Mint. And that's why you don't pay for Personal Capital, because they're making their money somewhere else. We're here to make, people, give them control and teach them how to make a long-term financial plan. So yeah, the philosophy is get in, get easy. Um, where we want the community to help us is how can we help you get from a really simple view to something that takes advantages of, you know, putting Roth conversions and creating, IRA rollovers when you leave a job and seeing the tax impact and like it's all in there. But unless you sit and you want to read 5 hours of help guides that I've written by hand, and nobody wants to do that, it's a tough journey. So it's not a, it's, I'm not going to sit here and say we've solved all those problems, but we'd love to solve them.
With OnTrajectory being a software that you wanted to create for yourself, and then now the community's putting in a bunch of input, has there been one item that you've seen a lot of the community bring up time and time again that you don't see on other software such as Mint or TurboTax?
There are a lot of things that we do differently than other tools. Now, I wouldn't necessarily include Mint in there. So there, tools like Mint, or you need a budget, other tools that are into budgeting, helping you get on track, control your spending. We have some elements of that, but that's not really our bread and butter. And then obviously tools like TurboTax that are going to help you focus on your tax rates, and figure out your tax impact and help you, maybe get some more money back. We don't really do that either.
Okay.
So what's awesome is that you didn't bring up any of our competitors. So,
Even better.
nothing leaps to mind like, oh, a long-term financial planning tool. Now, I already did bring up Personal Capital because they have a retirement planner, and there are obviously other sites out there. But what I think we do that's really like feature requests that that you were asking about is we're always trying to not put everything in the terms of like a financial planner. We're putting things in terms of a consumer. So we get a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't understand how to do this. I don't understand how to do that." And my first reaction is like, well, because you don't know enough. Then I'm thinking, that's not their fault that they don't know enough. It means we haven't taught them enough so that they're enabled to be able to do that thing, which gets back to my previous answer. So it's, and again, I haven't solved it completely, but it's that ease of use. It's being able to create what, and I'm not excluding advisors. I'm not excluding coaches from the conversation, because a lot of people ask me, oh, is this going to do all my financial planning for me? I don't need an advisor. Well, I'm not going to say that. A, because it would make me legally liable.
Right.
It's also because it's not true. There's some people that are DIY people. Like, I don't have a financial advisor. I've never
Right.
have. And I've probably I'm sure I've made mistakes. In fact, I know I've made mistakes. But this is not me. I'm a DIY guy. I want. So if you're a DIY person, OnTrajectory person, perfect for you. If you have a financial advisor, a financial coach, honestly, I think it's perfect for you too, because a financial advisor is not going to do 25 what if scenarios. What if I move to Portugal? What if my wife has a baby? What they're going to make you a plan. They're going to touch you maybe once every quarter or once every 6 months, but they're not going to do all these what if scenarios. So, if you want to do that, then, that's the tool's great for you. You got a money coach? Yeah. Take their advice, because I'm sure they're helping you. Put it into the tool, see how the numbers work out. So, I think I've lost the thread of the key question, but the community influences us absolutely. It was about what key features do we have that they've asked for.
Yeah.
It's really about the journey. The key features are, how do I make personal financial planning personal?
Tyson, I'm glad you brought up the fact that this software right now it kind of sounds like it's really geared towards those really money nerds that want to really look really in depth at their financial picture over the long term. For me personally, when I dove into OnTrajectory, it took me actually only like 20 minutes to get my entire financial plan into the software, where I could start then monkeying around with assumptions. And, you have a statistical process called Monte Carlo simulation that's in there. And it's super involved, and you can do so much with it. But I'm one that's a money nerd, right? I do this in
Right.
Excel files and things like that. But so it seems like that the OnTrajectory right now is really geared towards those type of people that are looking for that that customizable tool that can solve, not having 10 different spreadsheets to run different simulators or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you bring up the fact that you are moving towards having it more easy to onboard people that aren't as involved in their finances, aren't as in the know around all of this money stuff, for lack of a better phrase. So that's super exciting. Can you talk about, or can you share maybe what that next, year or 2 years looks like as you try to onboard more novices through OnTrajectory?
Yes, I will definitely tell you about that. But I want to touch on one thing that I said earlier, which is I I do love numbers. I love, solving the problems. But what I love more is what I was talking about before, about financial peace of mind, getting in the moment, living in the moment. And so for me, the reason that I wrote on Trajectory so I could get my head out of the numbers and live my life more with my kids and so now what I want to do is, yeah, personal finance is super important. Money nerds need a tool. I want to give that same peace of mind to people that are not money nerds. So now your question is, how am I going to do that? So, as I said, luckily we got some investment funds last year, and I remember one of the first conversations I had with my investor. He said, "Hey, no one wants to hear that your baby is ugly, but you've got an ugly baby." So the first thing that we did was completely redo the UI, make it more aesthetically pleasing, bring it up to sort of modern day standards. And the next thing that he said was, we and it and the reason I went with this investment firm was because he was saying all the things that I wanted to do that just as me and two other partners we couldn't do because we're not designers, we're not psychologists, we're not mental health experts in people's relationship to money. We're just three guys. He's like, we got to make this experience different for someone that's single and making a good and having a good wage for the first time, but they're spending too much because they're stuck in YOLO and FOMO. And then we also have to have an experience for someone who is young and just got married and now they have a young child and they're trying to set up for their future. And we got to have a different experience for someone that's 60 years old, is about to retire and wants to protect their income. These are all different things you can do in the tool, but nowhere in my tool does it say, "Oh, this is your persona. Here's how you should use it," or
Okay.
guide you through an experience that's targeted for your particular lifestyle. I always said, we can do it all. We can do anything. Well, that's true, but how? Show me how to do that. Help myself do the things you say that this tool does. So that's where we are. And we're working on personas, we're working on experiences, we're working on onboarding. And even after you onboard, customizing the UI to not overwhelm you with information. And at the same time, creating a version of the tool that if you do have a financial planner or you do have a financial coach, they can go in and they can see like the raw, like cash flow, like, well, actually what you see today, which we call the pro version. And so they can like make tweaks for you, but then you can see it in your nice and comfortable UI.
Cool.
It sounds easy. It doesn't sound easy. It sounds like something that is a no-brainer, but it's incredibly hard to do. And we're working through those things right now.
Can't imagine trying to solve those challenges, but what you just said, it's very exciting in the future of OnTrajectory. Even with what you guys currently have right now with that tool, and then moving it to that next level to really approach a wider range audience, because I think it's a tool that is going to help a lot of people. But Tyson, if we kind of switch to get to know you a little bit better, each time we have someone on our podcast, we like to ask them about a financial vice that they have. And this is really, we talk a lot about money. We talk a lot about investing and building a secure financial future. But along the way, everyone has a money vice, whether that's going out and going out to eat or potentially buying some sort of good at the store, whatever it might be. Everyone's got one. Everyone wants to buy whatever that is. And then, even if it does make them feel guilty from time to time. So Tyson, we've got to ask you, do you have a financial vice that you've, consistently bought over the course of your financial journey? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, I'm not going to say it's crazy expensive because I do try to make, even though it's a vice and I do buy things that I shouldn't buy, at least I do try to be smart about it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to call myself a car fanatic because I'm certainly not going to be able to list off every Chevy from the 50s and the block size of the engines. I can't do that, but I love driving small, fast cars. And my last purchase was a Tesla Model 3, which obviously is the most affordable of all of the Teslas.
Yeah.
And I can't wait every day when my wife says, "Oh, we're out of bread." I'm like, "Okay, I'm right back. I'll go to the store and get it for you." So my vice is I've owned a lot of small, quick, fun cars. My latest is my baby in the driveway. So yeah, that's my vice right there.
That's a good one.
But the Tesla Model 3 is the cheapest, and I'm saving on gas every month.
There you go. Financially smart.
Believe me, I justified it to myself.
You put
And I
it
got
on
in when
trajectory and
I did.
you projected it.
Dude, that's exactly what I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to buy this car. And my wife came into my office. I said, "Honey, I want to buy a Tesla." She's like, "What? No, you're not buying a Tesla." I'm like, "But look," and I put the numbers in. I was like, "Look, it only changes our 30-year plan by X amount." She's like, "Oh, okay, that's fine. Go ahead and buy it." And the funny thing was, I had a car payment at the time that was going to be finished paying the current car off in July. Like, I remember all these dates really firm. It was going to be in July. It's like, I'm going to buy it in July once we get rid of the car payment on the other car. She goes, "If you're going to buy it, buy it. Because what's 2 or 3 months of having double car payments going to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know.
I'll show you."
So I put the numbers in on trajectory.
Yeah, right.
And I showed it to her. She's like, "It's fine. Buy." And literally in 5 minutes, I went online and I bought my Tesla. Click, 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 bought.
You didn't do any back-end programming work to make it in your favor, did you?
Yeah, shush, we don't talk about that.
Well, Tyson, it's been a whole lot of fun having you on the podcast. We do have one final question for you before we really wrap up the conversation. So each and every week, Drew and I share with our listeners what's going on in our neighborhoods as a way for our listeners to get to know us a little bit better and, really make the people behind the microphone, behind the video, more personable. So what's going on over in Tyson's neighborhood? Where can people go out and find more about OnTrajectory and what all the good stuff that you've got going on with that?
Sure. So from a contact standpoint, OnTrajectory.com. You can write to me, Ty at OnTrajectory.com. I answer, it's a small company. I see everything and I love to interact with the community. From a personal level, what's going on in Ty's neighborhood? I have a 11-year-old in the other room who's turning 12 tomorrow,
Whoa.
which is cool. But I also have a 10-year-old who's going to be turning 11 later this year. So I'm an older dad. Had my first child when I was 40 or 41.
Okay.
And I am just having a blast having 2 almost teenage daughters. I'm approaching my mid 50s, and I'm listening to more pop music than I have in a long time. And I am totally loving being a dad of 2 tweens, which most dads don't say, dads that I've talked to, but I must have super good kids. I don't know. So I'm having a great time there.
Well, thank you again so much for being on our podcast, for taking us through your financial journey, walking us through OnTrajectory. And of course, above everything else, thank you so much for your service when you were in the military. Just greatly appreciate you and all of our other service members that have fought to protect this country. So thank you so much for being on the podcast here today with us.
Yeah, and guys, I'm always thankful when someone wants to hear the story, wants to talk about it. So thank you very much. And I know you guys podcast is growing quickly, and I wish you like super duper numbers, and I hope you and continue to have a good time, and hope to keep in touch with you guys.
Drew, one thing that I absolutely love with having different guests on the show is that I feel like when we go into the episode, we have this like idea of what we're going to talk about, and it typically kind of diverges from that. And we always get so many good little nuggets or key takeaways that we take with us, you and I personally, out of the episode. I know we talk after the show, and that's no different here with Ty this week. Obviously we talked a lot about OnTrajectory, but even beyond that, like just his pathway through personal finance, getting out of debt, building his own OnTrajectory, building that from scratch, and just his story is so fascinating. But what would you say coming out of that conversation with Ty is your main or your key takeaway?
Mine's kind of a mixture of two. So one of them's definitely his journey and how there's no A to B line of where you got to be. You don't have to do this and then go to here and then here and here. Like an example is you go to high school, then you go to college, and then maybe go to grad school, and then you get a good job, and then you put money towards retirement. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You just kind of have to be following your passions. And the second part of this mixture of my key takeaways is how down to earth and humble Ty is, and he doesn't give himself enough credit for how much of a self-starter he is. He's always saying he wanted to wait for the software to be done and then he ended up making it. But there's a lot of us out there, probably including myself, that would never even have went down the road of making my own software. And really, from his story from being a kid till now, he's always been such a self-starter. He started the snow cone business when he was a younger kid. He had the goal of wanting to go to college, but didn't feel like he was financially there. So then he found a way to get there, and that was through the military. After he gets done with his schooling, I mean, he was saying he just even like bought a computer, taught himself how to program,
Yeah, who does
and
that? Who does that at the end of the day, right?
it's really crazy. And I don't think Ty gives himself enough credit. Very awesome guy to chat or to talk with. I hope we can continue to chat with him in the future for how awesome he is. But really, the my two key takeaways, long story short, would definitely be the journey doesn't have to be a straight line to where you end up, and really being a self starter and moving forward one day at a time.
Yeah, and just taking those calculated risks, those chances when they present themselves. I think Ty has a great example of that in trying to build OnTrajectory and being successful at it. Drew, I actually think though this OnTrajectory is going to be a huge tool in a couple of years. I know the FIRE movement, so financial independence, retire early. The FIRE people, they ate that up. I know when he did some research and he put it out there in the public, and they just absolutely love to play with it because it is so customizable. And I think OnTrajectory is going to be such a big tool. But I think my main key takeaway out of the conversation is, again, we talk about equity, we talk about building net worth all the time, but I love the fact that Ty always keeps in mind being happy, and he takes it to an extent of calling it the happiness equity or happy equity. And I think that's so important to remember because I do this all the time in the sense that I get so laser focused on long-term financial goals that sometimes I'm even willing to forego things that are going to make me happy in the present. And I think that you always have to have that healthy balance of spending money to be happy or doing things to be happy, regardless, I guess, if you're spending money or not, and still continue to try to achieve those long-term goals.
Yeah, the happiness equity is really such an overlooked part of your financial journey. As we've talked about in the past with budgeting, that you have to find a way to treat yourself and you have to give yourself some leeway. If you get so laser focused on such a structured budget and you can never veer away or you never set money aside for giving yourself a break, it's very hard to continue with that budget in the long run. And I think that happiness equity gives your psyche just a little bit of a break and wants you to continue to go forward and motivates you to go forward and stick with that plan. So the happiness equity maybe is not talked about as much, but a very important part in I would say, my financial journey, and it sounds like the same with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also say Hannah probably would be a big advocate for the happiness equity as well, because it's just so important to keep in mind, because you can't be laser focused for 30, 40, 50 years. You can be consistent, but if you're being very if you limit your spending to such a degree that it's not sustainable, then you're just not going to hit any of your goals. And I think that happiness equity is a really good way to measure that.
And I guess as you're talking about your spouse, that is a very another big, part of it where not all of us think the same. I know my brain doesn't work the same way my wife works, and so sometimes those little breaks or meeting halfway are very big for continuing on with your plan, because if you don't find a way to compromise here and there, it's going to be such a one-sided plan that somebody's going to be very frustrated and not want to do it. FHA loan. This stands for the Federal Housing Administration Loan. This is a home mortgage that is insured by the government. This is issued by a bank or an agency that's approved by the government. This is a little bit different than a conventional loan. The FHA allows you to have a little bit less down payment and a little bit less credit score to be able to qualify for this loan. Seeing that you can have a lower down payment to qualify for an FHA loan, you will also have to pay mortgage insurance on top of that loan. So if you are a first-time home buyer, the FHA loan might be the right loan for you. I want to keep in mind that if you're looking to refinance your mortgage, the 30-year fix in February of 2022 jumped to 3.92%. This is the highest rate it's been since May of 2019. So if you are trying to refinance or try to be a first-time home buyer, your window may be closing to get lower and lower rates. And that's an FHA loan.
Say, Drew, have you ever heard of the Palm podcast?
Pomp podcast?
Yeah.
I think I've heard of Pomp.
Yeah.
He's a pretty big social guy, really
Yep.
into crypto and stuff like that.
Yeah. He's a big Bitcoin guy, and the Palm podcast is all about that. Actually, I think the Palm podcast is technically, he takes some of his show. He's got another podcast that he releases every day. I think it's the best business show in the world or something like that. And he takes segments of that and puts it on the Palm podcast. But he also does smaller segments by himself in the Palm podcast. But in this show specifically, he had a guest on, and they were talking about Web3, and it was just absolutely fascinating because Web3 to date has mostly been decentralized, right? And the whole idea is that you have this people just don't really know what you're doing, this anonymity. I can't even say that word, that's why I try to avoid it. Anonymity, whatever, I'm not gonna try. But the big thing with Web3 is that, you can kind of hide yourself out there. It's very public, but you can kind of hide who you are. Well, that it's really hard for Web3 products. So say like the new social medias of Web3, it's really hard for them to really identify and confirm who you are without some sort of identification process. But this guy that came on the Palm podcast, he was talking about how in the future there's a potential, and a really strong potential, that so today, right, when you go to different websites, you have to put in your credentials, or not your credentials, but like your username, your password. If you're signing up, you have to provide all the information to do so, right? Well, in Web3, the idea is that that still needs to exist in an extent, but it's going to have been at one company. So like you would provide all that information to one company that's experts in data privacy and all of that stuff. And so here's a really cool part. You give that information one time. And so then when you sign up for other things, so say you sign up for the Facebook of Web3, the Twitter of Web3, whatever it might be, you just say, yes, I am over the age of 18 or whatever their thing is. And here is my, my location for, to be able to confirm my identity. And then that company will work with that centralized unit of saying, is this the person they say they are? Yes. And then the Facebook or whatever actually won't get any of your identity identification information. So it's actually a pretty cool thing to think that in the future, like when you're signing up to things, your data is going to be still completely private, and it's going to actually be a lot easier and quicker to sign up for different services.
That's very interesting. And as far as going to one company, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I know that a lot of these Web3 companies, they all create their own wallets, and they want to create their super apps pretty much, so they have everything you need within their own apps. Your phone isn't going to be filled up with a million apps. It'll be one. You should be able to do everything off of that one app. So it's depending on who the consumer wants to go to. But as far as logging into these websites, I could see them. I mean, there's already something similar to that right now. And if you go on to, say, OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace, and there's other sites like this, but that's just a well known name. And to log in, you pretty much scan a QR code, it connects with your wallet, and then that's when you can make your purchases. It'll say you have this much balance of this coin or USD, and you can purchase this. It'll go into your wallet, and then you can log off. So it's still an anonymous person logging in, but it's all of your information from your side. So that could be something that you end up seeing a lot of these, in my opinion, a lot of these websites taking on, whether it's your centralized banking or social medias. It might just say connect your wallet, and then that's what's going to give you access inside there. But as far as seeing, I don't know how they'll keep the data private from that, because even though you're anonymous, they'll still have your wallet, and then everything you click on, they'd be able to see. So, as far as the privacy and data stuff, I don't know where that's going to go, but it's definitely an interesting question.
Yeah, well, the whole idea, right, is that this one company will own or will have your data, and then basically the way I kind of have thought about it after listening to the podcast is, the blue check marks on social media where you're a verified person. I think it's the same thing. It's the new blue check mark that this one company, because they have the reputation, can say, yep, this is, say, Cavan Stackpool. And so then when I sign up for things and I say I'm Cavan Stackpool, they just say, hey, company, is this Cavan Stackpool? Yes. And then they say, okay, you're good to go, without actually providing that other company any of my information. So you still have the concern of the data privacy with that one centralized company. But I think it's a pretty cool thing, because if you think about, like, right, um, you go online and there's so many people that you just don't know who they are. They're trying to impersonate someone else. Well, that just can't exist anymore in Web3, um, because you're going to have these people that are actually going to take your information and confirm who you are. So I can't be Joe Schmo on the internet. I'm going to be Cavan Stackpool, because I, one, don't have the information to create Joe Schmo, because he doesn't exist. And that part is really cool.
Yeah, and that could be a downfall of having wallet connects, because you could create a bunch of different wallets, and then those could just be your trolling
Right.
trolling accounts. So
Yeah,
having
exactly.
some type of
Exactly.
verification process or verification company is a pretty neat idea. I guess I never thought about it that way. Um, but as far as security goes, as the Web3 and data privacy, I think that's probably one of the most exciting things I'm looking forward to when it comes to Web3. Because in Web2 right now, they just know everything about you. They know your age, they know your gender, they know what you like. They know what you like before you know what you like. I remember even just 10, it was like 10, 15 years ago, there was a story about how even Target was tracking somebody's online, uh, or maybe it's Google or whatever, or seeing what they were actually buying and their tendencies. And they would send them ads in the mail, and the companies pretty much knew the girl was pregnant before she did.
Yep. I think I remember reading that same article or listening to it somewhere.
So that's kind of scary. And then I know even times when I say things around my phone, those will be the next ads that pop up. So
I think the craziest thing is like if Hannah is on her phone scrolling Instagram and like going on ads or like looking on the internet, and all of a sudden I'm getting ads on my Facebook about things that she was looking at. I think it's scary, but it's kind of at the same time, from being like a techie kind of guy, like it's kind of cool that that thing exists. Like they have the capability to do that, but I definitely am more on the privacy side. Like, hey, maybe that's just not a good idea.
these web threes are weird. I watched a movie last night with Ryan Reynolds in it. It was like called Free Guy, I think. And it wasn't necessarily putting VR goggles at Metaverse. It was playing video games on PC. It's called, I think it's like Free City, and they could just do whatever they wanted in that city. Uh, but it just begs a question that you are constantly in these Web3 metaverses, and you have these currencies that can go from real world to virtual world. This is kind of a tangent and not on subject here, but I was thinking last night, it's kind of like make my mind spin. People are going to have full-time jobs just in the metaverse, because if they can just play games and win missions and win cryptocurrencies or digital currencies, they can just withdraw that in the real world and buy things. So I think it's kind of hurt my brain.
I mean, that kind of exists today, right? That kind of exists already with we have professional gamers. So, but yeah, the fact that like you could work for a company in the metaverse and have virtual meetings, and never actually meet the people you work with face to face, which you kind of do now with remote work. But the fact that you can be in this centralized, this ecosystem together virtually is pretty cool. Pretty exciting. I can't wait to see what 10 years down the line brings us because, man,
It's
I,
moving
I can't
fast.
even fathom.
It's moving really fast.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, Drew, what a great show we had today. I'm so happy that we got to bring Ty on and talk about OnTrajectory.
I'm super excited. So glad we were able to connect with him. It's not somebody we would have ever thought we would connect with, and that's kind of the fun thing with this podcast is we can find people on social, or people can reach out to us, and uh, this big world is just keeps getting smaller by the everybody you get to meet, and people like Ty are so encouraging and energetic, and they really get your blood pumping after you get done talking to them. Talking with Ty and his journey was crazy. Starting being a little entrepreneur as I think he's like 14-year-old selling snow cones, serving our country, which was awesome. We thank him for that hugely. Going back to college after being in the military, teaching himself how to program, becoming a software engineer, and then eventually now starting his own business and working full time in his business. The journey to me is amazing. I'm so glad we were able to talk with Ty today. And I want to thank everybody else for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. And if you did, we'd love a subscribe or a review or just some type of comment. But thank you again for listening. And we will see you next week in the neighborhood.